What has happened, everybody? James Hancock here, back to offer my first impressions of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and I'm rocking out my Indiana Jones jacket for the occasion. It's actually my favorite leather jacket, but I bought this about 6 or 7 years ago. There's a reason why Indiana wears this jacket into battle so frequently, but the reason I'm doing a first impressions video instead of a full review, this is a big weekend for gaming. I've got Path of Exile 2 ready to rock and screaming my name, so I've put in about 12 or 13 hours of total playtime into Indiana Jones so far. So once again, these are just my first impressions. If you're sitting on the fence debating whether or not to pull the trigger, hopefully this video will be of use. Or if you've never heard of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, hopefully I will help put it on your radar, because in my opinion, this is the first really cool Indiana Jones story or experience to be had since 1989 when I saw Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade in the theater. I actually saw all three Indiana Jones movies in the theater when I was, I think, 5 years old or on the cusp of being five. One of my earliest and one of my best movie-going experiences was going to see Raiders of the Lost Ark. And I call it Raiders of the Lost Ark. Fuck all that Indiana Jones bullshit. The movie was called Raiders of the Lost Ark when it came out. But I was taken to see it with my dad, and perhaps the first time I was ever aware of like the idea of like a shot in a movie was when Indiana's putting on his hat in silhouette as they're digging into the Well of the Souls. But if somebody were to ask me, what is the definition of high adventure? I mean, there's some other answers you could give. You could give like The Man Who Would Be King from director John Huston, or perhaps like Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings adaptation. But really, it's the greatest adventure trilogy ever made, and I completely, totally disregard Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls. I completely, totally disregard Dial of Destiny. I want nothing to do with them. I will never watch those movies again. But I think I've seen the original trilogy 10,000 times. I mean, going to see Temple of Doom as a little kid, it was an earth-shattering experience. I mean, it's still an earth-shattering experience when you watch it now, but like, I was at a very young, impressionable age when I was watching these movies, and little did I know when it came to Tales of High Adventure, I would never have it that good again. And I think it's not controversial to say that the original trilogy is better than the original Star Wars trilogy, because you've got George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Harrison Ford, and John Williams doing arguably the best work of their career. But it's been a long time since I've been able to enjoy that flavor of high adventure. And I'm not about to say that Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is the equal of those three masterpieces, because Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is a style of adventure game that's not necessarily my cup of tea. It's a lot of puzzles and a lot of riddles and that sort of thing. It's much more like a Tomb Raider game, which obviously is borrowing heavily from Indiana Jones. Like, once again, speaking of great circles, cultural influences are all one big great circle. But goddamn, if you've been frustrated by recent trends over the last 5 or 10 years, where anytime somebody makes a movie sequel or a legacy sequel to, a decrepit old franchise, whether that's Star Wars or Star Trek or Indiana Jones or whatever the case might be, anything that's got like 30, 40, 50 years on it, like, if you despise the modern trend where you feel like the filmmakers have contempt for the material and contempt for the fans of the material, like, well then, first and foremost, you are not alone. But when you play Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, you'll be acutely aware of the fact that every single person involved in this game, you get the sense that they're trying to make every single second of gameplay as absolutely as exhilarating as humanly possible to people who fucking love Raiders of the Lost Ark, who love Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, who love Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And I know there's some people out there who don't like Temple of Doom. I'm like, what is wrong with you? That's one of the most bananas movies ever made. And by the time you get to the end, when Indiana Jones is just facing down everybody, he's just looking absolutely shredded as fuck, it's like the peak of high adventure. It's so goddamn cool. I absolutely love Temple of Doom and make no apologies for it whatsoever. But I went into this game with a very skeptical frame of mind, because I've just been burned way too many times by terrible movies and terrible shows that are basically just like abusing and pummeling the great movies of the past, and also Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and Dial of Destiny. These are not movies that I particularly admire. Once again, it's been how many years? 35 years since I've seen an Indiana Jones movie that I actually like. So, I was wary, gun shy, however you want to describe it. But as I started playing the game, within seconds, I was like, what the fuck? Like, I started like giggling uncontrollably, because like every single detail, every single moment, every single decision you get to make, it all felt like it was completely, totally true to kind of like the flavor and the style and the atmosphere of that original trilogy. And what helps is that you get to replay some of the events from the opening of Raiders of the Lost Ark, but they've turned it all into gameplay. And of course, that opening to Raiders is like the greatest video game ever designed, but you're just in a passive experience watching it. Now you actually get to play it. But what's extraordinary is all the little details that go into it. Like if you like fall off a little rock and stub your toe or whatever, you hear a little grunt that sounds like uncannily like Harrison Ford. And I might as well go ahead and give a huge shout out to Troy Baker, who has truly done wonders with his imitation of Harrison Ford, because it's not Harrison Ford, but it's, a characterization or an approximation. But all the sneering, kind of charismatic, kind of cocky charm of that character is all there. And it's just eerie how well they brought that character to life. Like the way he'll mumble under his breath when he's messing around with the puzzle or anything along those lines. Or the way he'll talk a little trash after knocking somebody out. Like you can do these little things where instead of just coming up behind somebody in stealth mode and knocking someone out, you get to do these little like taps, almost like Harrison Ford would in one of the movies. And after you knock somebody out, the game will have these little one-liners like "Sweet Dreams" or "Wanna Go Again, Shorty," that just sounds so much like Harrison Ford in his prime. But going back to the beginning, as like it took like 5 whole minutes before I realized that this was a game made by people who love everything about that original trilogy. And to the best of their ability, we're trying to create a brand new adventure, a brand new gaming experience that would embrace the best of that original trilogy and allow this franchise, this incredible franchise, to live and breathe again. So let me slow down and offer some technical details about who made this game. So all this information is readily available on Wikipedia, but Indiana Jones and the Great Circle was developed by Machine Games and published by Bethesda Softworks. And Bethesda Softworks, they're an absolutely legendary publisher, but they've been on a bit of a cold streak as of late with games like Starfield. I mean, Starfield should have been on the level of Elder Scrolls 3, 4, and 5, but it wasn't. It should have been on the level of something like, Fallout 3 and 4, but it wasn't. It was a big, giant, crushing disappointment. And I think a lot of people are just going to assume, oh, well, Bethesda, they've lost their touch and they've lost a step. They don't know what they're doing anymore. There's no way that they could possibly do a good Indiana Jones game. But goddamn, I am relieved to tell you they've absolutely crushed it. And once again, just continuing with the article, it is based on the Indiana Jones franchise and will feature an original narrative that draws from the film series set between the events of Raiders of the Lost Ark, 1981, and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, 1989. The story follows archaeologist Indiana Jones in 1937 as he attempts to thwart various groups who are seeking to harness a power connected to the Great Circle, which refers to mysterious sites around the world that form a perfect circle when connected together on a map. The game spans numerous real-world locales such as Peru, Connecticut, Vatican City, Thailand, Egypt, Shanghai, and the Himalayas. And even though Todd Howard from Bethesda Game Studios gets a lot of flack these days, or gets caught in the crossfire oftentimes, or gets a lot of negative criticism, I should add that according to Wikipedia, he conceived the game's story and he served as an executive producer. So Todd Howard, while you might have dropped the ball with Starfield, you clearly still have some good creative impulses in your DNA. So let's make sure that Elder Scrolls 6 is not a repeat of Starfield if and when they finally release Elder Scrolls 6. And as far as the gaming experience itself is concerned, they just crushed it. I was playing for like 10 or 20 minutes, and I realized at one point I kind of hit a dead end. I was like, what do I do? Where do I go? And I was like, you're Indiana Jones. Use your fucking whip. It hadn't even occurred to me to use my whip yet, and I looked up, and there was like a little branch. I was like, whoosh, hooked onto it. I was like, fuck yeah. Swung, and like, so you're constantly using your whip to swing or climb or whatever, and it's just glorious, especially since the sound effects sound just like the sound effects from the movie. I mean, the first time Indiana cracks that whip in Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's one of the most iconic moments in all of movie history where you're just like, oh my God, like who is this guy? What a total badass. But you get to hear that sound a lot. Or when a gun goes off, it sounds like the guns in the game. And most important of all, because you'll be doing a lot of punching in this game, the punches sound like the original trilogy, where you're constantly, like blocking, punching, taking people out and that sort of thing. And it's just glorious. So the combat is very satisfying, but it's not the only form of gameplay. Like there's tons of puzzle solving, but I would say the puzzles are challenging to a degree, but you're not going to really get stuck. Like you'll rarely get stuck. Mostly it's all about just kind of coaxing Indiana into doing things that feel like a scene out of one of the movies, or at least I didn't find the puzzles to be particularly challenging. But who knows? Maybe I haven't gotten to the really challenging puzzles yet. What really caught me off guard is that I'm actually watching the cutscenes. Usually when I'm playing any game, unless it's like some gorgeous cinematic, I skip cutscenes. Like, I'm not watching a movie, I'm playing a game. I want to be in the chair controlling the action. I watch all the cutscenes. Like, the voice work is incredible. Like, as Indiana's interacting with some old friends and some new friends, like, I'm not going to offer any spoilers, but there are a few familiar faces that you'll recognize from those older movies. But it's just scenes of guys talking about the Nazi obsession with the occult, or who are the great archaeologists out there, or who are potential interesting sources of information to go look for, or who are prisoners that need to be rescued from the fascists that have occupied the Vatican over in Rome, and that sort of thing. But like, the dialogue, it drives the story forward. It's like it's fleshing out the narrative, and the way the scenes are staged and framed, and the way that they unfold feel very Spielbergian, if that's even an adjective. But if you love Spielberg's style from those original 3 movies, you can tell they're trying to recreate that Spielberg experience, but the only difference is you're in the driver's seat. You are controlling Indiana. They're not just trying to recreate a movie experience. It is still a video game. Like, there are a lot of little kind of side projects and side quests that you can work on, like the camera. The camera is a huge part to accomplishing certain quests, but also anytime you see, like, a great inscription or a great painting or a great statue, if you snap a pic of it, you get some in-game currency that helps unlock better abilities, whether that's like regaining stamina or health when you hit somebody. But like, you can definitely upgrade certain basic skills, but you have to accumulate that currency by kind of finding it in-game. And one of the best ways to do that is to actually take in your surroundings and appreciate all the art and architecture that is all around you. But another piece of praise I have to offer is going to sound very hypocritical coming from me, because I'm a strong vocal critic of microtransactions. I feel like they just ruin so many games. But this game actually did have some microtransactions that I was willing to pay for, because you can buy the outfits from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and you can buy the outfit from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So you can choose, do you want to look like Harrison Ford with the shredded shirt and the shredded muscles and that sort of thing, like at the end of Temple of Doom? Or do you want to be in a suit like he was in Last Crusade for a big chunk of the movie? I've been opting for the suit, or you can just go, full-blown old school leather jacket, like the classic look. And I know that's basically like a 48-year-old man admitting that he wants to play dress up, but if you love Indiana Jones, like, of course you want to play dress up. Like, the whole point of Indiana Jones is that it's the ultimate hero. It's the ultimate wish fulfillment. It's the ultimate male fantasy of somebody who is incredibly well educated, who can beat the fuck out of you, who gets the girl, who can save the day, who has incredible expertise, and is funny as hell every step of the way. The game managed to inject a lot of that humor, and humor is hard to do in a video game. It's hard to capture the subtle, kind of condescending sneer that Harrison Ford is capable of, but by some miracle, they just managed to totally pull it off. And there were so many points while I was playing the game where I just got these kind of eerie chills and flashbacks. Like, at one point, I think I was walking around the Vatican. Where was I walking around? Anyway, I was walking around somewhere where, due to candlelight or torchlight, I saw my shadow on the wall. And when I saw my shadow and I saw that silhouette, I was like, oh my God, I'm Indiana Jones. It was so fucking cool. It's just a great little beat. Or even the title cards when they're introducing a new location and the year in which it's set and that sort of thing. It looks like the title cards from the movies, and it's just, every little detail goes a long way towards creating the illusion that you're in this world. And if I didn't specify earlier, this game is set about a year after the events of Raiders of the Lost Ark, because Temple of Doom is actually a prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark. It takes place a few years earlier. But in this game, you basically, and this is a mild spoiler, but you open up replaying the events of the opening of Raiders, and then you kind of come to, and you realize that Indiana, basically, at this point, he and Marion have had a little, like, split up, where they've gone their separate ways, and he's basically looking for an adventure to distract him from his emotional pain, but it just fits right into the overall Indiana narrative really, really seamlessly. But it's not that form of blender storytelling, which I despise, where they basically take a bunch of familiar ingredients and kind of stir them all together and try to make it feel new again. They are telling a new story with new villains and new threats, and I should give a shout out to the legendary Tony Todd. R.I.P. Tony Todd, marvelous actor who probably never achieved the stardom that he deserved to achieve, but he's fucking greatness. Early on when he first appeared, I was like, this game actually kind of scaring me. I mean, I've seen a lot of fucked up movies in my day, and it's hard to give me the heebie-jeebies, but I was getting the heebie-jeebies in that scene, especially once I realized, oh God, I got to fight this guy, and he's kind of terrifying. That is Candyman himself. He is not to be entered into in fisticuffs lightly, but best of all, they've managed to sprinkle in a lot of John Williams music throughout the game, and obviously, there is no Indiana Jones franchise without John Williams, because I guess if you want to make a world-class Hall of Fame, just classic movie, it's not enough just to have a great director or a great star or a great producer. Everybody's got to be good. Your cinematographer has to be great. Your screenwriter has to be great. Your costume designer has to be great. Your editor has to be great. Like, you need an absolute murderer's row of world-class talent that's all more or less kind of marching in the same direction, that where they're all making the same movie, where there's not like you don't want any dissonance, where they're kind of taking the movie in different directions. And that's what really made that first movie so special. It seems like everybody was on the same page, everybody was on the same movie, and they just assembled just like some of the most world-class talent in movie history. And this game is just a love song to everything that those movies achieved, while at the same time telling a story that feels true to the original franchise without feeling retro, without feeling like a ripoff. Once again, it's not blender storytelling. They've managed a continuation of that original story. And it almost gave me cultural whiplash while I was playing it. Because this game is truly that rare exception to the norm where they don't constantly apologize for their own existence. Like, there's nothing more annoying than if you watch a movie like Goodfellas and like, by the way, it's bad to be a criminal and some of the events in this movie might be shocking. It's like, go fuck yourself. I just want to watch Goodfellas. And so I went into this game fully expecting either constant like apologies or scolding or lectures like, how dare you like Raiders of the Lost Ark? We're gonna make you feel guilty about liking Raiders of the Lost Ark, and like, shame on you for liking Harrison Ford, blah blah blah. I mean, it's so ridiculous that we even have to discuss this stuff. But this is the world in which we live, where we see so many franchises getting it wrong. And so, like I said before, I had total whiplash playing this game. I was like, wait a second, you mean people recognize that there's a franchise that people know and love, and they're going to try to make a game that appeals to that audience? Once again, this should be 101 in franchise extensions, franchise management, but it's amazing how many people are like, no. Like, look at like Dragon Age Veilguard. If you look at Dragon Age Origins and then look at Dragon Age Veilguard, it's like, are they trying to make a game that appeals to people who love Dragon Age, or are they doing something else with a very different agenda? Yeah, and the answer is the latter. And so I was just giggling with glee that Indiana Jones and the Great Circle managed to scratch an itch that had not been scratched in a very, very long time. And I would still be playing it right now if not for the fact that Path of Exile 2 is absolutely calling my name. But I've been going quite a bit at this point without offering any criticisms, so here are a few criticisms. And my first criticism isn't even really a criticism, but I'll just say that this is not the genre for me. I much prefer like hardcore sci-fi and fantasy role-playing games where you basically get to create the world's most powerful motherfucker and fight really terrifying bosses and explore an open world environment. That is like, my idea of like a home run game. And this is a very different experience. This is like, very objective-oriented, goal-oriented. Like, they drop you into a location. You got your main objectives, a few side objectives. You solve a few puzzles. You kill a few bad guys, and then you move on, and kind of the story's moving forward. But there are people who absolutely love and adore this genre. That's absolutely their cup of tea. So it's not really a criticism, but if you're looking for Elden Ring, if you're looking for Baldur's Gate 3, if you're looking for that sort of experience, it is not going to be offered by Indiana Jones and I keep wanting to call it the Great Big Giant Circle. It's the Great Circle, making it sound like a Roald Dahl novel. But mistake number 2 would be not hiring Tony Stella to do some poster art. If you're unfamiliar with Tony Stella, hunt him down online. But he's done a lot of posters for the Indiana Jones trilogy just out of love for the franchise. But he also was hired to do the poster for Dial of Destiny. And I would say that the best part of Dial of Destiny was that poster. They should have just released the poster and left the movie in a vault, and everybody would assume the best. But Tony Stella, he does a lot of incredible work with Blu-ray releases and movie releases and that sort of thing. But hunt him down online and buy a few prints, show him a little love. But he is almost single-handedly keeping the love and affection for and the craft for movie poster art alive single-handedly. And my last criticism, once again, is not much of a criticism. These are all good signs for a very satisfying game. But I found it kind of mentally taxing to play, where there's some games where I can kind of like zone out and play them for days and almost kind of go on autopilot. This game, because you're constantly having to avoid people discovering you, or you're constantly having to kind of like figure out new riddles and puzzles to solve and that sort of thing, you never really just get to like veg out and just relax and just kind of play on autopilot. Even a game that's really, really hard like Dark Souls, you can kind of veg out and play on autopilot once you kind of get your feet underneath you. But with this game, I'm like, all right, I got to actually sit up, and you never get a chance to kind of relax before you're moving on to the next mentally taxing challenge. It's fun and it's satisfying and it's rewarding, It's not as relaxing as the kind of games that I like to play. Even though the kind of games that I like to play oftentimes are challenging, they're just relaxing in a different way. I don't know, maybe it's just the way my brain works, but this is just not my particular cup of tea. Like recently I've been playing a lot of Darkest Dungeon 2. Darkest Dungeon 2 is a pretty challenging game, but for whatever reason, I can play it for hours on end without coming up for air. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, I would have a hard time playing this game for like 12 hours straight, whereas a game like Elden Ring, I mean, shit, I played it for like 12 weeks straight. Like there's certain games that are just much more my speed. But I think at this point, I think I've said enough. I'm starting to get hot as hell. I gotta take this goddamn jacket off. Even though it's like 20 degrees outside, it is warm in here, so no more Indiana jacket. But also I just really want to start playing Path of Exile 2, and I can't do so until I edit and post this video. So once again, this game comes out on December 9th, or you can go ahead and buy it now if you want to buy a few extra bells and whistles. I think it adds about $30 to the price tag to get the early access, but then I'll go play Path of Exile 2 for a while, or for a couple days, do my review of that, and then I'll probably circle back to Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, because I want to see how this story ends. So I guess that's just a way of wrapping things up. If you have not watched Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade in a while, go back and do so. But also, Harrison Ford did a lot more than those. I'm going to post a link to my video that I did last summer where I posted my top 10. Well, I can't remember the exact title. It was a video called Harrison Ford Top 10 Roles That Made Him a Hollywood Icon, where I go into some of the other roles apart from Indiana Jones. Obviously, Indiana Jones is the best role that he ever had, but he did a lot of great work. I mean, he's a true living legend. But yeah, give a little love to some of his neglected classics or lesser known movies. Movies like Presumed Innocent, like fuck that Jake Gyllenhaal show. Watch The Real Deal, Presumed Innocent. It's a pretty hot and sexy movie. Or movies like Witness. But if you love these movies and you love this character and you are a gamer, right now the game's available on Windows and Xbox Series X/X, and it'll be coming to PlayStation 5 either in Q1 or Q2 of 2025. I have no idea why they're staggering the release. It's probably something to do with some sort of Xbox exclusive. So yeah, the console wars continue. But if you're a PlayStation guy, you will have to wait a few more months. But I'm rambling again. It's time to wrap this sucker up. It's time to play some Path of Exile 2. So thank you so much for watching this video. Hope I offered some interesting insights and helping people decide whether or not they want to pull the trigger and buy the game, or at a minimum, just putting on people's radar, just letting people know if you are frustrated with a lot of modern trends in entertainment, don't give up hope. There are still storytellers and artists out there who understand what makes these movies great, how to try to continue these stories in a way that both honors the past but also lets these stories move forward. And yeah, so just high five to everybody involved in this very entertaining game, and I look forward to seeing what games they might work on in the years to come. But if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting that notification bell. I would greatly appreciate it. But I hope everybody has a great weekend, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.